Dion Fortune, Psychic Self-Defense, Chapter 10, Non-Occult Dangers of the Black Lodge. Remember, the point of this is to get over the fear, to get rid of the fear, so we can move on and we can advance and we can grow in consciousness and we can make this world a better place than what it was before we got here and when we leave. The facts considered in the previous chapter, though they should make us exceedingly careful in weighing evidence, must not blind us to the fact that there are black sheep in every fold and that a fraternity which started out with the best intentions may quite inadvertently, through the ignorance or imperfections of its leaders, begin to drift onto the left-hand path. Perfectly innocent people enter it when it is in process of drifting, but not yet avowedly black, and may find themselves in waters that are unpleasantly dirty, even if not actually dangerous. Dangerous. The esoteric dangers will be studied in detail in the next chapter, but we may very well consider in this place the exoteric dangers, which may occur behind the veil of the temple. For human nature is much the same wherever we meet it, and shows little originality in choosing its road to the pit. It might be thought that in such a book as this, there were no need to touch upon these matters. But if this book is to serve the purpose for which it is intended, it is necessary to do so for three reasons. Firstly, because the greater proportion of the students of esotericism are women, and even in these enlightened days, they are usually ignorant of the life of the underworld, and a black lodge leads by a straight and narrow way into the land of Apaches and demi-mondanes, quite apart from its other drawbacks. That is very true. It is a lot of women interested in these things. Secondly, they like to play around and be like, I'm a witch. And they think it's funny because they like, I'm a witch. And these men are, look, they think it's funny because I don't know why, but I ain't going to talk about that. Secondly, a knowledge of these facts is essential for differential diagnosis. Thirdly, occult powers are not infrequently obtained purely are not infrequently used to obtain purely mundane ends. Therefore, when the question of ordinary criminality occurs in connection with an occult organization, the issue may be complicated by an admixture of methods that belong to another plane. We must always remember that a lodge may not necessarily have been formed for the express purpose of evading the law. It may have started with a perfectly legitimate end in view and have been exploited by evildoers for their own purposes. 4. Owing to the secretive nature of its proceedings, the fraternity form of organization leads itself to various forms of lawbreaking. One occult organization is well known to have been involved in the drug traffic. Another is riddled with unnatural vice. A third degenerated into what was little better than a house of ill fame. In its head was an expert abortionist. Others have been involved in subversive politics. That's funny you say that, ain't it? Those who join fraternities without properly investigating them and the credentials of those who are running them may find themselves involved in any or all of these things. No diddy. Behind the veil of secrecy, guarded by impressive oaths, many things may happen. And it is therefore essential to inform oneself most carefully concerning the character, credentials, and record of the leaders of an organization. And this is how many people get caught in that stuff because people just go off of what they consider to be popular or hot or something that they just want to be a part of because they think it's something greater than something outside of themselves, right? So they don't do no research. They don't go and look and try to see who these people really are, what they represent. Or sometimes people just trying to get ahead in life. But let's continue. Behind the veil of secrecy, guarded by impressive oaths, many things may happen. And it is therefore essential to inform oneself most carefully concerning the character, credentials, and record of the leaders of an organization. If these are not readily accessible, something is wrong. The mysterious stranger who has just arrived from the East or the continent, both rather vague addresses, is probably a fraud. If difficulty is experienced in discovering the antecedents of an alleged adept, inquiries could be made of the well known periodical Truth was originally founded to expose abuses in financial and public life, and for this purpose keeps a blacklist of individuals who are better to be avoided. It is fair and fearless in its methods, neither a persecutor nor a respecter of persons. It keeps a watchful eye upon the occult field and pillories, charlatans, a task for which it should have the gratitude and support of all who have the cause of the wisdom religion at heart. Truth, see, the commonest danger to which a person who gets into the company of undesirables is exposed is to be induced to part with more money than is convenient by the time honored expedients of either swindling or blackmailing, the latter being by far the commonest form of unpleasantness in black lodges. The one and only remedy in all such cases is to place the matter in the hands of the police. Firstly, it is your duty as a citizen in order that others may not be victimized as you have been. Secondly, if you don't, your persecutors will not leave you until they have sucked you absolutely dry. And not even then, if they can still find a use for you as a cat's paw, a blackmailer is never got rid of by giving him money. It is merely an invitation to call again. Act quickly and firmly at the outset, and you will soon be at the end of your troubles. To demand money with threats is blackmail, and to coerce any course of action by threats is also a crime. Any arrangements entered into or documents signed in consequence of threats are not binding. Threats need not necessarily be gross and open, such as the pointing of a revolver. Anything which coerces you against your inclinations may be interpreted as a threat. For instance, supposing it were intimidated, intimidated to you, however tactfully, that if you did not subscribe to the funds of an organization, your interest in occultism would be gossiped about and possibly involve you in unpleasantness with your relatives or your employers. This, in the eyes of law, would be blackmail. Anything, in fact, which plays upon a person's fears is a threat. No diddy. Let us now consider, and I'm just being silly saying no diddy, but he ain't the only one. This stuff been going on before he was born. Let us now consider what is the best thing to do. And I don't even think he's the worst case scenario we could hear of. I'm just saying that. Let us now consider what is the best thing to do if you are being threatened. It is seldom wise to answer threat with threat. Ooh, she bold with it. The best thing is to reply that you will think it over and see what can be done, and then go straight to the nearest police station and tell the whole story. You can be sure of the utmost courtesy, even kindness, and that every effort will be made to help you, even if you have to admit that you have not been wholly blameless yourself. And coming to the police and telling them frankly the position of affairs you have in popular language turned king's evidence, and the authorities will go a long way to protect anyone who does this. Now I gotta just put a little salt and pepper on her. This is what she looked like. This book was written in the early 1900s. I see what she's saying. But at such a time, people that look like me couldn't go into the police station and do that. But now you can. And even then now I would still move smartly because they might be involved in the shit too. Do not be deterred by the fact that you cannot bring forward any additional testimony in support to your statement. The police may tell you that there is not sufficient evidence for them to apply for a warrant. Nevertheless, they will make inquiries, and the very fact that the police are making inquiries will be sufficient to frighten blackmailers out of their wits and probably out of the country. Nor will they usually stop to make the threatened disclosures en route, but will go while the going is good. Moreover, your complaint will go on to the police records. Now that counts for something. And a watch will be kept. In due course, another complaint may be made, or, for all you know, may have already been made, and then the net begins to tighten. Always remember that the blackmailer has a great deal more to fear from exposure than you have. For whatever unpleasantness may be in store for you, he has to look forward to a long term of penal servitude and possibly the dreaded cat if the case is a bad one. A timely reminder of this fact works wonders with prospective blackmailers. Nor need the fear of exposure of your own shortcomings deter you. The nature of the charges brought against you by the blackmailer will never be mentioned. It is not you who are being tried, neither will your identity be disclosed. You will be referred to as Mrs. A or Mrs. B, far from being treated as an evildoer or having the finger of scorn pointed at you. You will find that you are looked upon as a person who is performing a public service, and every effort will be made by those in authority to smooth your patch. A determined effort is being made at the present time to stamp out this abominable crime, and judges are given exemplary sentences and protecting prosecutors in every way in order to encourage them to come forward. But quite apart from any other form of coercion, unworried persons may, while filled with enthusiasm or glamour by the new revelation, part with considerably more money than they can comfortably spare. They may even literally lay all their upon the altar, and then, disillusioned by subsequent events, greatly regret having done so. In many such cases, a competent solicitor can secure a refund. The courts do not look with favor on excessive contributions to movements. It goes without saying that no rightly conducted organization would consent to augment its funds at the expense of the ruin of one of its members. It must, of course, equally protect itself against capriciousness and spite in the machinations of the kind of mentality that tries to buy influence by subscriptions. It has always been our custom in the fraternity of the inner light to insist that any woman who proposes to give a large donation should consult her financial advisor before doing so. For one reason or another, we have refused upwards of £25,000 during the last 7 years, nor have we had any reason to regret having done so. The strength of an occult organization does not lie upon the physical plane. It is well known that there are various drugs which can be used to exalt consciousness and induce a temporary psychism. It may not be equally well known that most of these substances come under the regulations of the Dangerous Drugs Act, and that to obtain them from irregular sources or even to be found in possession of them, save for a legitimate purpose, it is to render oneself liable to prosecution, and in this case to the authorities, or exceedingly alert, and the magistrates exceedingly drastic. All initiates of the right hand path agree in declaring that to exalt consciousness by means of drugs is a dangerous and undesirable proceeding. There may be research workers who, for legitimate reasons, wish to undertake experiments, but I cannot conceive of any legitimate reason for introducing a neophyte to the drug habit. In any case, if such experiments are undertaken, they should be conducted under the supervision of a qualified medical practitioner who will be in a position to prevent catastrophe or deal with it should it arise. The drugs that alter consciousness also affect the heart, and hearts are not always as they should be. Moreover, the composition of rare drugs is not standardized and varies enormously. They are liable to contain various impurities, and samples may turn out to be unusually toxic. The unpleasantness of having upon one's hand an unexpected and unaccountable corpse is only exceedingly by the unpleasantness of becoming the corpse oneself. either of which eventualities may happen when people begin to experiment with the drugs that unloose the girders of the mind. That unloose the girders of the mind. And I wouldn't call mushrooms a drug, but even when you get to a certain dose of mushrooms, you're supposed to have a sitter. You're supposed to have somebody to watch you, make sure you stay where you at. Make sure you don't get out of hand. Some people be thinking mushrooms like a party drug. I be like, nah, you supposed to be chilling. And once you get over, if you start when you start macro dosing, you're supposed to have a sitter, somebody to watch you and keep you safe. Because mushrooms exalt consciousness. They expand your consciousness. Once you take over a certain amount, you start. The morals of mankind in general leave much to be desired from the point of view of the purists. And the occult organizations, occupying as they do the seacoast of Bohemia, leave more than usual. A few of the best maintaining that occultism is essentially a religion, uphold a high standard. The remainder are blessed with a kaleidoscopic collection of soulmates. This need not concern us here. If people choose to kick over Mrs. Grundy's apron strings, that is their affair. Nor need we at the moment consider the occult abuses of sex force, which will require detailed consideration in their proper place. All we need consider in this chapter is the purely normal form of loose living, which is camouflaged under the pretense of occultism. Of this, I have seen numerous cases. The head of one group systematically seduced his pupils under the pretext that it was part of their initiation, and the group accepted the situation in a spirit of the purest self sacrifice. Several others sailed unpleasantly near the wind, with the result that crushes and the subsequent nervous breakdowns were very prevalent. It ought hardly to be necessary to say that such methods form no part of the right hand path. It is amazing to what an extent women of the highest ideals and of good family and wide culture can be induced to accept such theories and practices. The danger of membership of such a group to young girls or unsophisticated women can readily be imagined. I have often been accused of being narrow-minded in my attitude towards groups in which such happenings are allowed to go on. But the cost in human suffering is so great and the general demoralization so sordid that tolerance comes perilously, perilously near to cynicism. It may not generally be realized, but there is just as much danger or corruption in a black lodge for boys and youth as there is for women. There have been a number of cases so flagrant that the police have intervened both here and abroad. In ancient times and among primitive peoples, human sacrifice was a common incident in connection with occult practices. It is not unknown in Eastern Europe, even at the present day. The nursery story of Bluebird has its origin in the practices of the infamous Gilles de Rais, Marshal of France and comrade of Joan of Arc, who slaughtered innumerable children and youths in connections with his magical experiments. I have never heard of a case in England, but there have been at various times some curious killings reported from the United States which look suspiciously like ritual murders. But in the absence of adequate information, it is impossible to come to a final conclusion upon them. There recently came into my hands, however, a book upon magic published for private circulation, in which the statement is made that the ideal blood sacrifice is a male child. The charge of revolutionary activities is one that has been frequently made against the occult movement. There are certain things, however, which must be borne in mind when assessing the truth of this charge. Firstly, the occult movement is not a homogeneous whole. It is totally unorganized and unregulated, and may best be likened to the state of England before the Norman conquest. Conditions in the various groups and associations vary widely, and what is true of one may not be true of another. There can be no doubt whatsoever that various organizations at various times have been implicated in politics, as witness the also the Theosophical the Theosophical Society's association with Indian political movements. But we must bear in mind that one generation's revolutionaries or the next generation's reactionaries. After all, politics are a matter of opinion. And even the people we disagree with, after all, politics are a matter of opinion. And even the people we disagree with may turn out to be right in the end. I personally am one of the I personally am of the opinion that an occult fraternity is extremely ill advised to concern itself with politics for reasons which I have stated in another of my books, Sane Occultism, and which I will not enter upon now as they are not relevant to these pages. But as folks from time immemorial have banded themselves together for political action, we cannot very well take exception to what the law permits. People who join an organization established for political work join it with their eyes open, and presumably for the purposes for which it was founded. Grounds for objection arise, however, when an organization is founded for non-political pursuits and subsequently the leaders, without consulting or even informing their supporters, take up political activities on their own account and use our organization for the purpose, thus involving their followers without their consent in whatever complications may arise, and using money contributed for a specific purpose for ends other than the donors had in view. It may be wondered what use at the present day revolutionaries could make of the occult organizations. Within my personal knowledge, they have used or attempted to use them for the purpose of getting letters to people whose correspondence is being watched. And I myself once received a request to allow a person who had been deported to return to the country under an assumed name and reside in one of our community houses as a member, and was offered some hundreds of pounds for doing so. Needless to say, the correspondence was sent straight to the authorities. The problems which we have considered in this chapter are not peculiar to occult fraternities, but are common to any organization which does not discriminate as to its members. The organizations which advertise much perforce take all comers and sort them out in the light of subsequent experience. And some of these experiences can be very queer indeed. One cannot blame an organization that picks up an occasional black sheep. One only takes exception if it retains an accumulation of them. A lodge of dubious whiteness can be readily recognized by the type of people who belong to it, who may best be described as the seedy adventurer type with a sprinkling of smart society folk, who often have a taste for crude flavors in the way of sensation. The really black lodges are as carefully guarded as the high grade white lodges, and no outsider can gain entrance to them. The serious student of black occultism is out for knowledge and magical experiment, and he is not going to waste his time on a tarot. Those who choose to graduate into a black lodge after serving their apprenticeship in the outer court of a white lodge do so with their eyes open, and experience must be their teacher. One cannot feel that they deserve much sympathy if the experience is a painful one. The person I am out to help is the person who is a victim, not the one who is hoist with his own petard. The man or woman who, rejecting the steady grade of the way of initiation, chooses to get up with a rocket had better come down with the stick. Any request for a large sum of money should always be regarded as a danger signal. It is one of the strictest conditions of initiation that occult knowledge may never be sold or used for gain. I know of an occultist who charges £300 for one of the initiations he confers, and he will give it to anyone who has got £300. In my opinion, the person who pays out £300 for such a person, for such a purpose, deserves the kind of initiation he is going to get. It is also a bad sign when an occultist makes free with signs and wonders before the uninitiated. No genuine adept ever does this. The person who reads your past incarnations, describes your aura, rolls up his eyes, twitches, and gives you a message from your master as soon as he is introduced is a person to be avoided. The more I see the occult movement, the more I am amazed at the things people can say and do and get away with. The average person is out of his depth when he deals with psychic matters. He usually goes through three phases. Firstly, he thinks it's all superstition and fraud. Secondly, his skepticism being breached, he will believe anything. Thirdly, if he ever gets as far as thoroughly, he learns discrimination and distinguishes between the black fraternities and the white fraternities and fatuous fraternities.